Are you one of those guys that grew up on the other side of the tracks? You know, that side where only the brave venture and many get stuck in? It's also a place that builds character, or should I say, reveals it. And regardless of where we started from or how we deal with life, it's how it's shaped us by our role models and our vision for a better life. Well, today, my guest has a story that shatters any notion of allowing where you start in life and has little bearing on where we actually ultimately end up. And you bet, it's a story straight out of Compton. And before we get into all that, I just wanted you to know that being a man today has never been more challenging. And so if you feel that pain like I do, then you know that there's a pain of loneliness and at times of unworthiness. And it's masked by our anger and our resentment. And what I found is that it's masked by those because we feel that we are uncertain about the next phase of our life and we're afraid to take that next step. And so if you're tired and fed up with where your life is at, I'm going to encourage you to participate and start your hero's quest. It's an opportunity for you to become more, accomplish more, and live more than ever before. Just go to members.theawakenedman.net and start your quest today. And with that, let's get on with today's episode.
The average man today is sleepwalking through life, many never reaching their true potential, let alone ever crossing the finish line to living a purposeful life. Yet, the hunger still exists, albeit buried amidst his cluttered mind, misguided beliefs, and values that no longer serve him. It's time to align yourself for greatness. It's time to become a revolutionary man. Stay strong, my brother.
Welcome, everyone, to the Revolutionary Man podcast. I'm the founder of the Awakened Man movement and your host, Alan DeMonso. Let me ask you something. How did the neighborhood that you grew up in shape you into who you are today? And has it served you or has it hindered you? You know, I can remember in my youth moving to a larger city, and I was actually going from grade 7 to grade 8. And those first few years were really hard. I was a new kid in town, so I found myself in more schoolyard fights than I care to remember. And then something happened as high school came along, and being pretty decent in sports, there was no need anymore for me to prove who I was. And so this experience for me really shaped my thinking about what it takes for somebody to step up or for myself to step up. And while I'm proud of my accomplishments as an Olympic caliber chef, my guest today has an even more impressive story. So allow me to introduce my guest. Darrell Williams is an inspirational speaker and a certified facilitator and life coach who provides clients with expertise in the realm of leadership, relationships, and purpose. His leadership background includes 30 years of the federal service, highlighted by his induction into the White House Communications Agency Hall of Fame. He's got a 20-year military career where he's led over 500 White House missions using the following strategies from September 11th, 2001. And so because of that, he was selected as one of 5 key leaders to direct emergency action communications for the Vice Presidents of the United States, including duties on Air Force 2 Command Representative. Telling you, we have a powerful guest here today. Welcome to the show, Darrell. How are things, my friend?
Alan, thank you for having me. I'm so glad to be here and looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, right on. Me as well. Just really looking forward to this conversation. And as you know, here at the Revolutionary Man, our opening question is always going to talk about that story of our life, about the time in our life that how it shaped us into who we are today. So tell us about that time in your life when you knew things had to change. What did you go about doing about that? And how has that shaped you into the man that you are today?
So great opening question. For me, it definitely started growing up in Compton, California. For those that saw the movie Boys in the Hood, that's the timeline that I grew up in. And then my 2 brothers and sister grew up during the timeline of Straight Out of Compton. So just being in that environment, and then me being the oldest, Alan, it really kind of put it on my shoulder like, hey, I need to make the right decisions. I need to model what success can look like, because what we're looking at in the streets was not a clean version of success. A lot of gang violence, right? A lot of drugs. It was a real deal there. And you had to make some decisions. And one thing I always tell people that a lot of times where you grow up, it really does build the character in you if you pay attention, not focus on the negativity, but look at what can you learn from those situations. And that's what I did. I kind of learned from those situations. I kept my head on the swivel, always paying attention to what's around me. And then I had to make that decision probably my 11th grade year. It's like, what am I going to do with my life? We didn't have not even a lot, but, barely any money growing up. And I knew my grades were okay, but they weren't ready for college. So for me, I ended up joining the military. And I didn't have any family members in the military that I knew of, but once I decided to join, I reached out to a couple of them just to get their experience. And running themes came from two of my cousins, which was don't just join to join, but find out why you want to be in there, find out what you're really good at, and then make it a career. Because both of them had gotten out right after their first enlistment, and they both said it was, the worst decision that they made because they really should have followed, the path to where it was going to lead them. So I went into the military already knowing that I was going to stay for a while. Didn't know if I was going to retire at that time, but I knew I was going to get in and just get out. And the military really gave me the discipline, the leadership, taught me about mentors and accountability. And it really did propel me to a future that I could have never imagined.
Wow, man, I was just taking a bunch of notes there. You had some really key points that I want to go back and touch on. And that one of the first ones you talked about is being the oldest and having to have, feeling that you needed to be that role model and show what it means to be successful. And I'm the oldest as well in my family. We have five of us. And so I just want to take a little bit more time about that and think about how that experience and that childhood experiences being the oldest, did you feel that there was lots of pressure on you to do that? And if there was, how were you handling it?
Great question. For some reason, I didn't feel any pressure. I guess because I had a lot of friends who were the oldest, and being in that neighborhood, we knew that, okay, we didn't want our brothers and sisters to get caught up in the gang violence, and when our brothers or sisters get caught up in the drugs. So it was just, to me, just one of those things. It was just an accepted responsibility. It was like, I'm going to be that person. And then even in my regular family, I had an uncle that was really good, had some, good job, had a cousin that was an accountant. But it really was far and few, and, as far as a lot of role models there. And, I went to Compton High, Alan. So at that time, that was fourth most dangerous city in America. And the school lived up to the hype. I mean, people hated playing us in football game because after the game, if we lost, they would shoot, up in the air, not at anybody, but just shoot up in the air. And if they won, they may shoot up in the air. So you didn't have a lot of people that would come and say, hey, I'm going to go to a career day at Compton High. So for me, it was like, okay, if I don't see it, then what can I do to kind of be, whatever that model should have been?
Absolutely. Really, it sounds like as being the firstborn, we're almost pioneers in a way, because we're shaping our family. We really have an opportunity to reshape our family's destiny. We can choose to repeat generational traumas and challenges, or we can try to reshape that. And, and I know there's lots of people who listen to the show that are the firstborn, and they may not be as fortunate and may still struggle with that. And so you're having you on today and to talk about, the upbringing. And that's why I thought it was so important in the intro to talk about this transition, because you went from Compton, and now you transitioned into be a White House communications agency. Tell us how all that came about and how that changed your life.
So in the military, they have what they call special assignments, right? You have the regular units that you normally go to, the Fort Braggs, the Fort Hoods of the world. But then I didn't realize that there are these things called special assignments where they take people that are very mature, people that they believe are self-motivated, and you go to places such as the Pentagon. And the weird part, Alan, is I was going to these military competition boards, trying to make a name for myself, trying to separate myself from the crowd. And the senior leader pulled me to the side. It was like, hey, I think there's something inside of you that is a little bit bigger than just going to the normal units. And I'm going to change your orders from Fort Hood and go to the Pentagon. And this is where a lot of us make mistakes, Alan. Sometimes we have in our mind what we think is important and where we think we want to go. But life has a way of putting you on a trajectory that it's like, follow this path and it's going to give you greater satisfaction. So as much as I would like to say I loved going to the Pentagon, I hated it. I tried to get out of it a couple of times, but luckily there were some leaders that saw through my knuckleheadedness and said, no, you're not going to something lower than what you're already at. And even at the Pentagon, a friend of mine and I went to a recruitment session where they were looking for people to join the White House Communications Agency. And it was a Friday, Alan. I went there just to get out of work. Had no idea what they did, what the organization was about. And then I got accepted. And then once I got accepted, I was like, oh, okay, now I need to get serious about this. And once I got there, I immediately, looked for people that reminded me of me, came from different areas, and like, okay, how did you get here? And then what did you do to stay here? Because when I went there, it was one of those situations where if you made a mistake, they would send you back to the regular service, whether it was Army, Navy, Air Force, and we didn't have any Marines. So it was like, I don't want to leave because, again, right, I'm the oldest. I don't want to show that I couldn't make it. I don't want to disappoint my neighborhood. Like, oh man, these guys from the streets in the hood, they can't make it in these type of environments. So again, put another, chip on my shoulder. It's like, hey, I want to be the best person that I could be that ever came from Compton, and show them that they didn't make a mistake.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's obvious that you approved that in spades for sure. So that's a great story about, coming from that upbringing to where you are today. But as you think of your life today in this moment, what's alive and real for you right now?
What's alive and real for me right now is I have to pay it forward. Like, you don't spend 15 years at the White House serving 3 presidents, 3 vice presidents, flying on Air Force Two, and not learn something, but most importantly, figure out how do you take what you learned and then pour that back into, whether it's other men, other young people growing up, husbands, right, who may be struggling with, how do I, lead my family, and just learning all those different things and trying to meet people where they are in their life. And that's the part that I love about my story, because people rarely find out. It's normally after the fact. They're like, wait a minute, I didn't know you were in the Army, or I didn't know you worked at the White House. I'm like, well, that's not important right now. What's important is, you're a husband that's trying to get some feedback on how to be a better husband, right, or parent. And that's the role that I need to play right now.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. And I think that's always a key. We come to that point in our life where we recognize that we've had advocates that have supported our growth. And when we were that, as you said, that knucklehead, we weren't able to see the forest for the trees and to get that guidance. And then when we have that opportunity to pay that forward and to help guide those individuals as well. And so when I think about your story, there's something that we talk a lot about here at the Awakened Man. Is one of our foundational virtues is that of having a spiritual life. So tell me how faith played a role in your career and the work that you're doing as well.
It's really amazing. When I joined the military, and especially working at the White House, there's a lot of things that they tell you what not to do, right? Because again, when you work in a place like that, you become a target for a lot of things that you're not even aware of, people trying to gather information or things of that nature. And what I found, Alan, was my faith automatically put me in a position to do well in that environment, because my faith was higher than my ethics. So it was like, oh, you're telling me not to cheat and not to, get off Air Force Two and try to find a woman in every town or every city. I'm okay with that, because my faith is going to keep me from doing that anyway, because I'm supposed to build up and not tear down. So my faith was really great. I mean, don't get me wrong. I went to a lot of clubs, but back in the day, because going to a different city, you're like, okay, man, I'm at the same club that, football players and basketball players are hanging out at, right? But also I realized, like, hey, I'm in this town where, and I found out, Alan, every city that I went to, there was a neighborhood like mine, right? Unfortunately, the neighbors moved out, so it was just a hood, right? Yeah. So I would find myself going to the front desk at the hotels and say, hey, is there a school or a church in the area that, maybe dealing with some challenges and could use somebody to be a guest speaker? And it was so funny. People were like, well, aren't you here for a White House visit? I'm like, yeah, but I still have a couple of days left and I need to do something positive in this city. And I would always find either a church, whether it was a weekend or if it was during the week, maybe it was a school that, back then it wasn't as structured. So, you reached out ahead of time, you can get there on a Friday and just, be a guest speaker for one period. And that part was really good for me, because again, you can't do those type of things if you're selfish, right? If you're unethical, you're trying to get over on somebody or figure out some way to do something, ridiculous. So by me trying to accentuate the positive, again, my faith automatically lined me up to do those type of things.
Absolutely. I think when we recognize that we're grounded with faith, and that we allow that, and I really like how you put that, your faith was higher, and it was higher than your ethics. And because we move from between a spiritual perspective versus an individual perspective, and that it's when we can recognize that we have something greater than us that really resides with us, that we can do much better things and do things better. And I think what you're doing now with your work, and one that leads me into getting into your work. Now you have a company called Alliance Seminars. Tell us a little bit about the Alliance Seminars, how it came to be, what it is that you focus on, and what people and what its primary goal is.
So Alliance Seminars Coaching is, really basically it's a veteran-owned faith-based organization that provides coaching services, keynote speaking, and certified workshops. And it really came about by, again, all this experience that I had in the military, this great leadership training that we would get for free, right? Just every grade that you got promoted to, you had to go to a leadership class or leadership training. And I'm like, oh my gosh, these valuable lessons, I need to take this back to the streets, because there's people that's struggling and they don't know what leadership looks like. So when I retired out the military, I started the organization, just wanted to, again, just a little way of giving back. And then as I started focusing on schools, I eventually started working more on adults. So my wife, she coaches the women, and then I coach the men. And then if we do something on relationships, we may do a tag team that way. And then I work with organizations as far as their leadership, because I found that regardless of what type of business you're in, you still have to take care of your people. You still have to create a positive culture, and you have to retain talent. So there's no better formula out there to do that than outstanding leadership. So I would just bring a lot of those lessons learned from the military, and I try to apply it in the clients that have me come in and speak. And one thing I always love when people say, well, we can't do that here because you were in the military and they had to do what you said. And I would tell them, Alan, that although they had to do what I said, that doesn't necessarily mean they brought their best to the table every day. For them to bring their best to the table, I had to be a better leader. I had to challenge them, motivate them, and show them what's in it for them. And those are the types of things that I try to bring to organizations.
I love that, especially that last part. I think that when we think about as men, and this podcast focuses on men, when we're in leadership roles, we will have a component of our role where we feel, and our employees feel that it may be a have to. But what you're really saying is we need to approach that in a much broader perspective, in a wider piece, right? Looking at it from how can we, even though they have to do it, how can we increase that engagement? Doing it because I have to, yeah, it gets done, but how well does it get done? And then and to what level of success do you want to achieve? And I think it's so much more. And so this training that you've had from the military and even just doing the work through the White House communications, I can well imagine that there must have been some pretty challenging times during those. And so tell us a little bit about that, about maybe what was your most challenging travel mission and how you've used those lessons to what you're doing today.
Well, one thing anybody that served at the White House Communications Agency will tell you, the most challenging season is a presidential campaign. I mean, you're talking about, Alan, from the time that president in office, I work for Democrats and Republicans, so it doesn't matter. I always tell people, I support the office, not the person. But man, those campaigns are brutal. You find yourself, because everybody sees them on TV going from city to city, and they don't realize there's a group behind the scenes that's setting up all that equipment, packing it up, putting it in the next city. And what happens is you still have a regular life that's going on. You have people whose wives are pregnant. You have people whose kids are sick, right? You have people that the kids are having trouble in school because, hey, dad's been gone for so long or mom's been gone for so long, and, I'm acting out. So for me, those challenges were, how do I get my team to focus, even though there's a lot of distractions going on, because I still need them to bring their A game. You're in a job like that, when you make mistakes, like I tell people, it's one of those few jobs where you make a mistake, the whole world knows. And you might not get that name in the news, but trust me, when you get back to the agency, they're looking at the list of who's on that trip, who's responsible for that mishap, what happened, are they new, did they make a mistake? So I would always preach those type of things to the team every time we got to a place and say, hey, I know this is your third trip in 3 weeks, you haven't been home. I know we have a lot to do, but I need everybody to take tomorrow off. And they're like, no, what do you mean? We got to hurry up and set this up. I said, no, you need to pause, make those phone calls. Those of you that are in school, catch up on your homework. And then tomorrow we'll hit it hard, right? We'll do this. And those type of things help the team realize, hey, here's a leader that's not worried about, hey, make me look good, right? Let's get this set up right away. Let's work 12 hours, even though you just got to the city. No, no, no. Let's pace ourselves. We're going to be great. We're going to do well. It's already inside of us. We just need to focus on what are those things that's going to help us to maintain that.
I love that. What I really appreciate about that is you're really diving into, really knowing your people, right? And knowing the people that work for us. And I think that's really the transition we're seeing in leadership, even more so today, that servant, and I like to look at it as an observant leader. It's one thing to serve and be there and available for them, but are we observing about what's going on? Does Alan need that? Is he just off a little bit today? Is he performing like I'm normally used to see him? Is Darrell on today, or is he off a little bit? And I think when you have leaders that recognize that and recognize and make that time to be able to give back to them, man, to me, I think it would only make sense that the productivity and the success is virtually guaranteed because they know that you care about them.
No, that's a great point. A real quick story. I had one of my trips we were going on, and I was picking up a team that had already jumped. We call it jump, meaning you didn't go back to DC, but you jumped from one state to another state to another state. And I remember my radio lead was saying, hey, I have a guy on my team. He's making a lot of mistakes. I'm going to have to check behind him twice. I just want to give you a heads up right now in case you want to write him up. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. I haven't even met the gentleman yet. Let's give him a chance. He's like, I'm telling you, the guys keep screwing up. And true to form, he made a mistake. This is before the president showed up. And I went to the guy and said, hey, let's meet after, work in my office. And he just thought I was going to be like all the other leads and, chew him out and write him up. But I just took a different approach. I said, hey, is there anything going on in your life that maybe we're not aware of? And he basically was like, nobody ever asked me that. I'm like, well, I'm asking because everybody else could have had some different reasons. Doesn't mean they didn't care about you. They just didn't get to that part yet. Yeah. But I want to give you this opportunity. And then Alan, he opened up and told me that his wife was pregnant. He was only supposed to do 2 jumps. And he told his wife, I'll be back after that second trip. And then operations took over and they couldn't send him back. So he was dealing with the stress from his wife of when are you coming home? I'm close to having this baby. And here's the interesting about men. And you know this, Alan, we're so prideful. We don't want to let people down. So we will suck it up and we will degenerate and take all the heat rounds from our spouses or our children, knowing that it's not us, but it's us not letting anybody else find out that I can't do my fair share. So when I told the individual that was, about his wife, I said, hey, man, I appreciate you being honest. I know you're first sergeant back in the rear. I said, so if it's okay with you, I want to call him. He's like, no, I don't want anybody to think I can't do my part. This is a campaign, right? We're all out here. Everybody's traveling. I said, I get it. I said, but guess what? We're early into the campaign, right? We're still going to need you down the road. So how about I talk to your first sergeant? I'm not going to say anything about, you making mistakes because that's irrelevant. Right? There's a reason for the mistake. I'm going to tell them that, you did a good job. You were honest here, and we just need to allow you to go back to take care of some things. And then should the baby come, and we'll get you on the back end toward the end of the campaign. How does that sound? Because I had to get his buy-in out. I couldn't make it sound like it was my idea. I had to say, hey, we all need to refresh in a certain way. Tell me what you think about that. And again, it won't be in a negative way at all. As a matter of fact, I'm going to tell them the truth. You didn't want to go back. But I pulled rank and said, I just think in the long haul, in the long run, it's going to be better for him just to go back, refresh, and then get back out here. And the guy thanked me for it. He went back. The wife had the child. He was able to stay home for a little while, but then the family was able to come in, right, after a little period of leave. And then he was able to get back on the road. But the difference, Alan, was this time he was in a better mindset.
Yes. Man, love that. Just love that. And we had an opportunity to spend some time and with our folks, we can really uncover some real gems there. And I would imagine that this individual probably turned out to be one of your top-notch employees for this particular campaign, and that's what you're looking for. You want to find that way to pull it out of them and get them really to rise up. And so that leads me to thinking about, you're really good, obviously, at leadership, and you do a lot of training and all that. But if we had some young people that were listening to our podcast, and we have some 20-somethings that listen to the podcast, what would you tell that young person growing up who maybe cannot see a future outside of their surroundings? What can they do? What advice would you give them?
I love this question. So 3 things I would share with them. First, I would ask them to identify what they're good at. I've had so many young people say, well, I'm not good at anything. I'm like, no, that's not true. You might not have realized it yet. But let's go back and, really look at what you've done in life. So I would tell them, identify what they're good at, which is their passion. And then I would tell them if they're not in a situation where they have to make, a lot of money right away, pause and look in your neighborhood and your community and see what type of need is out there. And then I tell them to match that passion with that need, because that will equal up to your purpose. That formula has always worked for me. It's worked for people that I've shared it with. It may take them a while to find it, but they'll eventually come back to me and say, hey, I did what you said. I thought about it and it worked. And now I'm this, or now I'm in this industry or that career. The second thing I would tell people is collaborate with a mentor to help you focus on what's important. So many times, especially as men, we just want to do things by ourselves. We think we have to figure it out on our own. We got to come up with all the answers in 24 hours. Like, stop putting that extra pressure on yourself. Don't do it. Talk to a mentor. And everybody says, well, how can I find a mentor? And I tell everybody, mentors are all around us. We just have to pause long enough to go, wait a minute. That gentleman at the store, every time I come, that older gentleman always tries to share advice with me. Maybe I need to go back and really just spend some time with that gentleman, right? And then the third thing is identify an accountability partner to keep you honest to your goals, right? Accountability partners are different from mentors. This is somebody that's close to you. They're not just going to tell you what you want to hear, but they're going to validate what you told them and say, hey, Alan, you told me in 3 months you wanted to start a podcast. What are you doing? Are you doing the research? All right. Are you identifying the equipment that's needed? Are you identifying a platform? The accountability partner is going to hold you to what you said. And then once you do it, you're going to be like, man, that guy's a pain in the butt, but I'm so glad they did it, because now I'm doing this great podcast helping men. And if it wasn't for my accountability partner, I probably wouldn't have got to this stage this quickly.
Man, I just love those 3 pieces, and especially how you broke that first one down, and I just wrote that formula down. Matching our passion for life with the need gives us our purpose. It's so simple yet so profound. I think that was outstanding. Well done. I'll just make a wild guess here, and I think through your course of your life, you've probably read 1 or 2 books in your life, and I just wanted to know: is there a book that really was profound for you, that really gave you that aha moment? And if there was one, what was the name of the book and what was that aha moment?
Definitely. In the military, they always tell you, if you're not learning, you're not reading. If you're not reading, you're not learning. So they pounded that if be a better leader, you have to read. And it's so funny. One of the simple books that I read a long time ago was a book called Who Moved My Cheese? People said, no, not that little book. I'm like, yeah. They're like, why is that book so important? Because it talked about change. And as a leader, as a father, as a husband, I don't care who you are, you have to change in your life. And if we don't change, we miss out on so many opportunities. So that aha moment for me really was the book Who Moved My Cheese? And everybody's like, no, that's a baby book. I'm like, hey, it's a baby book, but it has some grown-up purposes in there and life lessons. And I say, and you can read it at any time in your life. And I guarantee there's something going on in your life where you have to change, or you have to get ready for a change. And that book can really, in a simple way, go, man, somebody moved my cheese, and I'm sitting here waiting instead of going out there and trying to find the new cheese.
Oh man, I love that book. I haven't looked at that one in a little while. I think I'm going to pull it out and just go give it another once over, because you're absolutely right. It's just a small book, but the lesson is so profound, because we tend to, as people, get stuck in our own story or negativity. It's so easy to be there. And when we recognize that, yeah, somebody just moved my cheese, I can make a choice. I have choice how I want to show up. And so I always like asking that question to my guests, and it's interesting to see what comes up of them. In your career, you must have obviously you've worked with lots of different individuals, different leaders, and different stages of your life. But what would you say was the best piece of advice that you were given, and how has that served you today?
The best piece of advice that I received from one of my greatest mentors, and his name is Steve Smith. I always try to say his name whenever the time comes, because he was just so influential in my life. And one thing Steve told me was, Darrell, regardless of what's going on in somebody's life, there's always a story behind it. He said, so never judge somebody based on the results that you see at that moment. He was like, the good leaders, they dig deep and they find out, hey, what's going on? What's going on? And if they don't want to share it, just let them know that, you still got faith in them. And if there's something that's going on, you're available whenever they want to talk about it. And he just told me that when you do that, you build trust, right? And you allow people to realize that, here's a leader that actually cares about me and not just the mission. And I've done that in every place. Even when I retired and working for the government, I still use that type of mindset. And it's so interesting because you have so many people nowadays, saying that, they can't understand a certain generation and, they don't want to do it the way we did it. But when I talk to them that way, I find that I'm connecting with, no matter if somebody that's been in the government for a long time or somebody that's junior, and people will come to me and say, hey, how are you able to talk to so many younger people? I'm like, I just use this simple philosophy. I don't judge them. I hate the phrase back in my day, those type of things. It just turns people off. And I just try to make myself open. So if they do want to talk, right, I'm there to help them.
I had to chuckle because I catch myself saying that phrase more often than I care to. And this is, I sound more like my father.
Right.
And people really don't really care about what it was like back in the day because they're dealing with today. And so how can we show up for them today and not yesterday? Darrell, of everything that we spoke about today, and maybe there was something we didn't get a chance to touch on, what would be the one takeaway you'd like our listeners to have?
Really want people to understand that life's challenges really do groom us for our greatness. And I got to say it again, life's challenges really do groom us for our greatness. I know that's hard for some people. Like, what are you talking about? I just lost my father. I just lost my mother. I just got fired. And if we just pause just enough and not react so quickly with the negativity, you will find there's somebody there that's going to help you get through that. You're going to find that job that you thought you liked, you're like, man, I really didn't like it. And this gave me an opportunity to do something that I'm really passionate about. So a lot of times, it's those crossroads in our lives that really allow us to spring forward to something better. So I would just tell people, don't look at life's challenges as, oh, life is out to get me, or I must have did something wrong and I'm paying for it now. It's like, no. All of us go through challenges. The key is, how do we react to those challenges? And again, if we pause just enough and not be so quick to try to fix it, but really just take our time and look at what's going on around us, you just may find something a little bit better than what you had before the challenge.
That's fantastic. I like the idea, the visual of the crossroads. And we have so many of them in our life, right? And we get to define and change our direction or our lives if when that crossroad comes up. And so what a great piece of advice to leave everyone with. So I just want to say thanks a lot, Darrell, for spending time with us today. And, I really learned that this doesn't really matter from where we come from. We really do have choice in our lives, don't we? And so if men were interested in getting a hold of you and participating in your work and your programs, what would be the best way for them to do that?
Sure. They can reach me on Facebook through Alliance Seminars Coaching. They can also reach me on my website, which is allianceseminars.org. And they can also catch me on LinkedIn as well, because again, my whole life, for the rest of my life, it's really about serving others. And like you said earlier, being a servant leader has so many rewards that it's not just about the tangibles, but it's those intangibles that you'll find yourself, especially as a man, because we're created to solve problems and lead and things of that nature. Whether you're married or not married, you're still leading someone or some opportunity to lead somebody, even if it's you leading yourself. And I just say that being able to help people get to whatever their next is, it's very rewarding.
Love that. Love that. So once again, thank you so much, my friend, for being on the show. Loved our conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Revolutionary Man podcast. Are you ready to own your destiny? To become more the man you are destined to be? Join the brotherhood that is The Awakened Man at theawakenedman.net and start forging a new destiny today.